Hello everybody, my name is Stacia and I'm just a girl on the internet that likes to talk about movies, and this week I'd like to talk about the 1944 movie To Have or Have Not. And yes, this is the movie where Bogey met Bacall. Lauren Bacall was 18 years old when she was cast in this movie, and it is her first acting job. And Humphrey Bogart was in his mid-40s when he made this movie, and married at the time. So one of the greatest love stories of all time between Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart started out in less than ideal circumstances, let's say. This movie was directed by Howard Hawks. It's actually Howard Hawks' wife who saw Lauren Bacall on the cover of, I think, Vogue or Harper's Bazaar magazine and told her husband to cast her in the movie. And her character for most of the movie is under the nickname Slim, which Humphrey Bogart's character calls her Slim. And that was the nickname Howard Hawks had for his wife. This is based on the Ernest Hemingway novel To Have or Have Not, and Howard Hawks and Ernest Hemingway were actually good friends, and I guess this movie came about because they were hanging out and there was a challenge to make a movie out of Ernest Hemingway's worst novel, and that was To Have or Have Not by Howard Hawks' estimation. And this is what comes of that, although it is wildly different from the novel. The screenplay was also the final screenplay, and working on the movie as the writer, writing new scenes in the movie, was also William Faulkner. So besides Humphrey Bogart playing the character of Harry Morgan, whose nickname from Lauren Bacall's character is Steve, which is what Howard Hawks' wife called him as a nickname. And of course, Lauren Bacall, character's name is Marie, but Slim to Humphrey Bogart's character. The movie also stars Dolores Moran, who was supposed to have actually a larger part in the movie. Her female character was supposed to be the main female character of the movie, but the testing with Lauren Bacall was so good that they did rewrite the movie to make her part bigger and Moran's part smaller. And then we have Walter Brennen playing the part of Eddie. You also have Hogey Carmichael in here playing the part of Cricket, the musician at the club. And you will in fact notice a lot of similarities between this movie and the movie Casablanca. Howard Hawks intended this to be his Casablanca. Like Casablanca, it takes place during World War II. And an American expatriate, played by Humphrey Bogart, helps transport a French resistance leader and his wife to Martinique while romancing the lounge singer. And the lounge singer is Lauren Bacall's character, and the only difference is there's not a love triangle between the French resistance leader and Harry Morgan and the woman. That was sort of rewritten, like I said, to refocus on Lauren Bacall's character Slim. And yes, this is the movie with the famous line by Lauren Bacall to Humphrey Bogart, the "You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? Just put your lips together and blow." The implications of that line are astounding. And Lauren Bacall did say that her and Humphrey Bogart weren't love at first sight, but their first encounters as more than just co-stars did happen about 3 weeks into the shooting of this movie when Humphrey Bogart kissed her. And she was nervous, saying that, she was a teenager, although over the age of 18. She was nervous co-starring with, Humphrey Bogart, who was an established star. He was already kind of legendary then. And to help her with the shakes she would get while filming with him, she learned how to lower her head and look up with her eyes to look at him, which kind of became Lauren Bacall's signature. but it would help her deal with the shakes that she would get when she was in a scene with Humphrey Bogart until she, got more comfortable with him as a scene partner. And do remember, she had absolutely no acting experience at this point. She was a model before that. And Howard Hawks also had eyes for Lauren Bacall. He was known to have lots of affairs on his wife, even though his wife and him had sort of this, cheeky relationship. And he, fancied himself as having an affair with Lauren Bacall. And he was very upset when he found out that Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall had started up a relationship. And he threatened, because he had an option for Lauren Bacall's contract, to sell her contract to one of the Poverty Row studios that would basically relegate her to B movies. And during the filming of this, he did come around. They did all become friends, and he got over his slight of not being the one to have an affair with Lauren Bacall. But Howard Hawks also ended up, instead of Lauren Bacall, having an affair with Dolores Moran on the set of this movie, and I believe one of the extras in the movie. Still all kind of funny because of the relationship that Howard Hawks had with his wife. They probably had an understanding about what was happening. Even in, like I mentioned, Lauren Bacall's character's nickname, Slim, was based on his wife. And even parts of her personality were based on his wife. Like I said, his wife is the one that suggested that he cast Lauren Bacall in the movie, and her lower, smoky voice was also very similar to Howard Hawks' wife's voice, and her demeanor and her sultry slinkiness. So obviously there's a relationship there. Obviously he admires his wife and based one of the sexiest damn characters on her. But like I said, I don't know what their personal life was. Maybe they had an understanding that he could just have affairs. But Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall would fall in love on the set of this movie. Humphrey Bogart would go on to divorce his wife that he was married to when the relationship started up, which was a relationship that was already rocky and already headed to divorce. Humphrey Bogart had been married 2 other times before this as well, and Lauren Bacall was his 4th and final marriage. Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall ended up doing 4 movies together, and they did get married in 1945, about a year after they met, and were married up until Humphrey Bogart's death in 1957. Like I said, this is based on the Ernest Hemingway novel, but if you've ever read that novel, large portions of that were changed. In fact, Faulkner, Bogart, and Howard Hawks would work on the scripts while they were filming, and some of the lines were largely improvised. They would run through the script in the morning, write fresh pages, and then in the afternoon film the movie with largely new dialogue. Production for this movie started on February 29th, 1944. And only 36 pages of the script were complete to start filming because large changes were demanded by the production code at that time. But even with those setbacks and the rewriting on set, this movie was shot in 62 days and they completed filming on May 10th, 1944. And most of this was shot on the Warner Brothers studio backlot at the time, with some beach scenes filmed on Balboa Beach and Newport Beach and Laguna Beach, California. But it was filmed at Stage 28 and Stage 28A on the Warner Brothers backlot. And the premiere of this movie was held October 11th, 1944. At the time, the critical reception to this movie was mixed and leaning on the unflattering side. The publicity focused on the initial reaction to Lauren Bacall. That's how the publicity department liked to, get her out there and see what they could make of her. And then the initial reaction saw it as a gimmick. They either praised her or criticized her And they said it was in order to take attention away from the press. It was largely faulted for how much it veered from the Hemingway story. Only the first 15 minutes of this movie really resembles anything in the novel. But overall, critics thought it was a fast, witty romance whose plot was merely an excuse for some good scenes sort of stringed together. So the movie as a whole they didn't like, but it had a few scenes that they liked. And to them that wasn't enough to really recommend the film. And it was up against comparisons to Casablanca. A lot of the reporting at the time compared it to a wannabe Casablanca remake. Time magazine at the time called it a tinny romantic melodrama which millions of cinema addicts have been waiting for ever since Casablanca. They thought that the film itself focused too much on character and atmosphere rather than having any plot. So basically, I think what it boils down to, people just thinking the movie's okay. But one thing is film audiences loved it. It was one of the top 10 highest grossing movies of 1944. Warner Brothers records show the film earned over $3.6 million in the US and $1.6 million in the foreign market. So it was close to earning the same amount that Casablanca made. Nowadays, To Have or Have Not has one of those where we look back on the film and people now have a great opinion of it, liked the storyline. We can acknowledge that it is very similar to Casablanca, but it has its own personality, and I think it is helped by that connection between Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart in real life. Their romance went on to become legendary. So now if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 95% approval rating based on 37 critics of modern day critics. So it's pretty much in the universally acclaimed movie category. But at the time, like I said, mixed reviews, sort of middling, sort of, hey, it's a okay movie to watch. But box office hit, the audience liked it at the time, to now it being one of those classic movies that every classic movie film fan should see. It's kind of a wartime film noir movie also. So it has those two 1940s classifications for you. And to go along with that, this movie, since it was not critically well received, it was just kind of okay at the time, it is nominated for no Academy Awards, no really critical awards, except I think Humphrey Bogart was given the Best Actor Award by the National Board of Film Awards, which is kind of like more of a popularity contest than a critically acclaimed contest, which Humphrey Bogart was very popular. And I personally really like the movie. And like I said, a lot of that has to do with the chemistry on screen between Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. It kind of just sizzles through the screen at you. They're very hard to take your eyes off of, especially Lauren Bacall. She is just, what an introduction to Lauren Bacall. And it is a classic that every true old Hollywood film lover should see, should study. It is stunning to look at, and Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart, you just can't take your eyes off them. But again, thank you for joining me. Like I said, my name is Stacia, and I am just someone on the internet that likes to talk about movies and just likes movies. I love classic movies. I love watching movies. I always have. So I thank you for joining me, and if you like this kind of thing and you like movies as much as I do, consider subscribing to the channel. Give me a thumbs up, give me a comment. I love discussing the movies with you. But I will see you next time. I love you all. Bye.